Good evening, everyone, and we have two special guests apparently tonight. Jagger, what you got going on there?
This is Bruce. He's my new co-host. He cracks me up a little bit more some nights than you do, but I'm not gonna get into that.
I am kind of offended.
I mean, listen to this crunch. He only has like 4 appendage ways he can move, so
I feel like you should have just had him T-posing at this point.
If his arms would go straight out, I would. He'd be in the background. His arms only go straight out, so he could be a Frankenstein in the background, but that's about it. That's about as far as we can go.
Oh man, well it is spooky season, so I guess it makes sense. Well, anyway, good evening everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of Comic Relief, the live weekly talk show for all things comics, their on-screen adaptations, and everything in between here on the Box Network, the new talk show network covering comic, horror, anime, and music news. If you're joining us live on Twitch, please note that alerts are muted as not to disrupt the flow of the show, but will be acknowledged at the soonest opportunity. If you're watching us on YouTube, an easy way to show your love and support is to make that YouTube algorithm happy by giving us this video, or any other video, a like, share, and subscription to the Box Network. If you'd like to stay up to date on the upcoming shows and news, join us on Discord or follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Links will be in the description box below. But for now, Jagger.
Yes?
On with the show!
On with the show! On
with the show!
He forgot the "We are your hosts" part. He's Xndr,
We are
I'm
winging
Jagger.
it. We are winging it. You can start it. You can start it.
You're messing up the flow.
So we are your hosts. I'm Jagger.
And I'm signing off. He's got this. You take over from here.
We are your hosts. I'm Xndr, and we got Jagger. We got Bruce.
And we have a special guest tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about the current state of comic book adaptations, as well as the past and the future, and some things we've been getting into the past week. For those of you joining us live, feel free to hit us with any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, whatever may be, and whatever may come to your mind. While we are live, we will do our best to address those questions as we go.
I love shaking things up. I love seeing you just
Catches
completely
me off guard
dumbfounded
every time, and it blows my mind that you can still do this after how many episodes? 25?
Yep, we're on episode 25.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, joining us tonight is an old friend of mine, writer for TheDirect.com and nerd extraordinaire, Russ Milheim. Say hello, Russ.
Well, hello everyone. I'm happy to be here.
That's good. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
I write for TheDirect.com. News, reviews, interviews and stuff. I did a few Shang-Chi interviews recently. I live in Georgia, so that's fun. There's a lot of things happening down here.
Oh, absolutely. If anyone here is familiar with the Georgia area and what goes on there in terms of movies, it's a happening place. So that's definitely a great place to be for a
lot of fun stuff to do, even outside of that. It's a good place to be.
Yeah. So we're gonna do a little bit more small talk here. Talk.
How small are we talking here?
Talk.
Any.
All right, it's too small. It's too small. Get us some bigger talk.
All right, talk. No,
Since Xander's having a stroke, what have you been getting into this week, Russ?
We didn't say stutter.
He's been having a stroke. He's having a stroke over there. Something's going on.
It's been a week and it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, I know. So what have you been getting into this week, Russ? Like comics you've been reading, shows you've been watching, movies you've seen, whatever it may be.
I've been very busy. But there was the PlayStation showcase. That was really fun and very, very exciting.
Yeah,
that was very
exciting.
We'll get to that, I'm sure.
We'll get to that in the news, yeah.
Honestly, a lot of what I'm getting into is really what I'm going to get into. I just bought Deathloop today.
Ooh.
Mm.
and it's sitting in my PlayStation 5 untouched, but I'll get to it.
Hmm.
Uh, and one of my favorite shows comes back later this week as well. Sex
that?
Education on Netflix. I don't
Oh,
know if
okay.
Oh yeah, season 3, right?
Yeah, it's very, very good, and I'm very excited.
Hmm.
Hopefully, I'll have time to watch it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real. I barely have enough time to watch the shows that I keep up with.
Dude, same. The only one that I'm keeping up with right now is What If.
Because it only
And we
takes
actually,
25 minutes to watch.
We also actually just started Lucifer, finally.
Nice.
I've
So,
been meaning to
good.
watch that. It's been on my list of things to watch since
Yeah.
it started. And I
Well, like
just
2 years
never
ago,
kept
I
up with
started
it.
watching it, and I watched literally the first 2 episodes and never got back into it because I was just too busy, and there was other stuff that I wanted to catch up on. And then yesterday we had like a makeup date night because I was on duty on Sunday, and we're like, hey, let's just try Lucifer, and Jackie fell in love with it, and I was just like, yep, this is why I wanted to start it in the first place because it makes you think. For anyone else that's not really well versed in it, you say the most concerning thing. I really like Satan. I really like.
He
It
said
worked. We got
You
another
just-
one. We got another one.
You just like the
This is
old
a
grandmas
victory in
walking
my
by.
book.
Oh my god, he just said
Oh my
that.
Lord.
But anyway, so what we got? We got some news, right?
Yeah, now that we're done with the small talk with Russ, the news.
it's the
Oh,
best
no.
part of the show, clearly.
Oh no, things are broken.
What did you do?
My nerd news button is now the spoiler alert button. I'm assuming. Let me try the spoiler alert button. Let's see what happens here. Oh no, they're both the spoiler alert button.
Shuts the stream down.
Oh no.
Okay, well, just imagine there's a nerd news graphic there, because again,
there it
this
is.
is Xander's.
But
This is
also
Xander's
spoiler
stroke
alert
episode.
at the same time. You never
Yeah,
know.
That's
it
true,
could be
that's
mild
true.
spoiler alerts for anyone not paying attention.
And
but,
now the news.
Jagger's just like, oh fuck me. Anyway.
Today's been a day already. We're only how many minutes in? It's been a day.
Oh man, 8 minutes in. 8 minutes and counting. This is gonna be a fun one. All right, so Elizabeth Olsen wraps up filming on Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, and on top of that, WandaVision scored in 3 Emmys actually. At the time writing this, they only had 2. The 2 that I have here: outstanding production design for a narrative program and outstanding fantasy and sci-fi costumes. I believe the 3rd was for music. It was music related for
Agatha all along. I
Yeah.
believe.
Yep, it was for Agatha all along. Yes, so
I think
3
it's like best
Emmys.
original song. I think it's best original song in a TV
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, I think that's
that
the
makes sense.
specific one they chose.
Yeah.
Which I mean, that was fucking catchy.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
everyone remembers it. So
Mm-hmm.
It still gets caught in my head every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
You
I've
can
been
blame
meaning to
Agatha.
rewatch it just so I can get to that point and just like relive the feeling.
Speaking of the Sony showcase, Sony finally unveiled Spider-Man 2 for the PS5, a direct sequel to the popular PS4 Spider-Man and Miles Morales expansion games. And from the same studios, we're getting our first official Wolverine game, and I am hype about both of them because the Spider-Man 2 game, we get Venom as a villain. There's a potential that we're going to get Kraven the Hunter as a side villain.
oh, it was definitely Craven speaking. No doubt
Yeah.
about
Oh
it.
yeah, it's 100%
Absolutely.
Kraven. My thought is that Kraven unleashed Venom onto Spider-Man, and I think it's going to be like, I think the story is going to be based off of like Kraven's last hunt.
I know there's
That'd
a
be
little
sick.
bit of, I don't know. I'm going to assume everyone's played the first 2 games. And I'm going to talk freely. But you know, the after credit scene. Wait, should I not speak?
No, you're good. You're good. I don't really care for
Okay.
spoilers like that. But I do not own a PlayStation,
Well,
so unfortunately.
I'll go a little vague with it in case you ever do. But the after credit scenes for both of them kind of set up a direction for the symbiote that's very much not connected to Kraven, and also very contained to a very specific character.
Mm.
And so as for how Kraven gets involved with it, who knows? And you know, it might not even be. He might have nothing to do with Venom, and that's just how they cut the 2 together for the reveal trailer.
Yeah, true.
Um,
They have been known to bamboozle us before.
But I think, what
That's
I
true.
get from it is that no matter what, the main villains are Venom and Kraven.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're meant to take away from it.
I thought it was just
mean-
hilarious how immediately there's articles everywhere like, who could it be? Some people are saying it's Kraven. Maybe it's Chameleon. I'm like, what? Huh?
The Russian
showed
guy
Venom.
talking about wanting a challenge. I wonder who.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's impressive that they have Tony Todd voicing Venom. I would have
Yeah,
never thought to like even ask him for that, and now I've heard it. I'm just like, oh, why haven't we had this before? He's perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are excited about the Wolverine game, and I'm excited and I'll play it. I'm definitely not like at extreme levels, but my first reaction after that, especially seeing that Insomniac was doing it, I was like, "What about Spider-Man 2?" And then that was next. I was
And
like,
then
"Oh,
it came
okay."
next.
Yeah.
It's like,
And they
thank God,
probably thought
thank
that
God.
as well. They're like, "We literally can't not have a Spider-Man 2 trailer here, or we'll
Right.
never get the end of it."
Right. I like the fact that with the Wolverine trailer, what's giving me hype is like all the little Easter eggs that are in that one scene that kind of lead us to some of the things we might see. Like there's a teaser that we're gonna get Hulk in this game. Um, there's a William Stryker reference, so there's probably gonna be some kind of level where we go to Alkali Lake. There's
That'd be sick.
Yeah, there's
I was
rumors
reading.
circulating on it.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was reading
You're
that the game might take place in Madripoor.
Ooh.
That would be cool too. That would be cool
And
too.
like you could kind of have a Spider-Man open world there because it's such a unique kind of characteristic city that a lot of things can happen in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Do like
That
do
makes me
like a
even-
little Easter egg where they actually have the real power broker and give a big middle finger to Sharon Carter. But you know, I would add that to the game. But that's just
I
me. I'm
actually,
just still a
since
little
since
salty.
we're on that real quick, Russ, what was your take on Sharon Carter being the power broker?
well, part of it. Well, so I mean, it wasn't great. I didn't necessarily mind her being the power broker. I just don't think they set it up very well.
Mhm.
There wasn't that much impact, and also the reveal was just completely underwhelming.
Yeah.
Didn't make too much sense. And like I didn't mind like the power broker is not that notable of a character in the comics, so you can
Right.
do whatever you want with their myth. At least in my head, right? Like it won't bother me. But I don't think they did a great job at starting her journey there.
Yeah, especially like when you mentioned the reveal. Like, I remember when I first saw that scene take place. They had the dialogue, and then all of a sudden, I'm like 2 minutes past. I'm like, hold on, wait, what? Oh, son of a bitch! And then like we were. Go ahead.
I don't know if you two guessed it before it happened, but I know a lot of people had already like they had gotten to that conclusion like 2 episodes ago.
Yeah.
And so like it was no longer a really big reveal because they just didn't hide it that well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reveal itself was underwhelming, so that just made it worse. And also, I don't know why Sam didn't question anymore. I was like, there's a lot of questions to be had. Why is this? You should
True.
probably know that she's the power broker.
Yeah,
everything
I
kinda leads
remember
up to it.
Jagger saying that he called it early on.
Very early on. I think like
Yeah.
as soon as we got to Madripoor and like she's showing all these connections, like I look at Xander, I'm like, bro, what if she's the power broker? He's like, no way. It can't be. If they do
I was
that,
in
they're
denial,
dumb.
bro.
He was in denial the entire time.
Yeah.
Like every time we were
I mean-
theorizing, like every week we got a new like hint at
Mhm.
who it might be. And I'm like, I mean, it still could be Sharon. He's like, no, I think it's gonna be the Mandarin.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the
all
Mandarin.
the way up, even up until when we got the first trailer for Shang-Chi. Like I was like,
Yeah.
what if they make it so that the Mandarin is actually the power broker and it leads into that and it's like blah 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 blah. And I'm
He
like,
was
that would be
making
cool.
all sorts of connections. He was Charlie Day
No.
with the whiteboard.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's only the start of her journey. So
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys saw. You might have touched upon it, but there were rumors that she's going to show up in Moon Knight.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
So that could be a thing. And I assume that she was going to be in Armor Wars. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I can see that.
I mean, it feels like where you put her next, you know?
Yeah.
Someone with whatever she's doing. It's like, well, if there's an arms race,
Yeah.
that's where she should go.
Yeah. I could also see her probably being involved with the I hope inevitable Thunderbolts project. Because we've
Wait
already
for that
seen
Thunderbolt project.
seen the little bits and pieces kind of coming together for that. So I would like to I mean
I don't know if we'll get like a. I think what they're setting up is basically a combination of like Dark Avengers and Thunderbolts.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll see like the classic Thunderbolts, at least not right now. I think what they'll probably do is like it's kind of a bit of both. I think they'll probably use Dark Avengers just for branding. It's just a bigger, more impactful name.
Mm-hmm.
True.
But yeah, I mean that's definitely it's gonna happen. As to when they'll group up, probably like I mean, the Young Avengers could be a good time for that team to come out of the woodwork and go up against them.
Yeah.
Even though the Dark Avengers currently are really only like besides Zemo, who I guess hasn't really. I mean, there's no confirmed team, but it seems pretty clear that he's involved. There's not really anyone like evil on the team.
Yeah, they kind of like ride that line.
Questionable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't really know what true direction that's going.
Yeah. Well, moving away from Marvel just a tad here, the official trailer for the new animated Aquaman has been revealed, and I'm getting some hardcore like Adventure Time vibes with this.
I don't like it at all.
I don't either. I don't understand why this is a thing.
Like, it gives me those vibes of like when the old Aquaman cartoons, like Aquaman and Aquaman and the Fish Friends or something, where it's like him surfing on 2 seahorses kind of thing. I'm like, nah,
I kind of viewed it when I saw this. I kind of viewed it the same way I kind of viewed the reveal for MODOK on Hulu. Just why?
Yeah.
We don't.
But like
need
MODOK was kind of introduced as sort of like that humorous type of villain, where it's like you're not supposed to take him real serious.
Yeah.
In any medium.
He rides that line pretty well sometimes, though.
He does. He has had his moments where it's just like, oh God, MODOK, really? And I don't know. I don't think they're going to be doing that in the show at all. And I don't know how they're going to actually handle this Aquaman series. I think they're going to try and market it to kids. And I think it's a bad move.
Yeah,
because you think about the progression of where Aquaman's going to be in the next few years, we're going to get this animated Aquaman show that's geared towards kids. And then the next big thing that's going to come out is Aquaman 2, directed by James Wan, which is going to be part horror film. Kids are going to want to go see it because supposedly, I mean, I think they're going to redact it. I think the studio is going to axe the hell out of it, but you know.
Hooray, Warner Brothers.
Hooray. Love it.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, it could easily happen. They've clearly done it before, but it was so public how much free reign James Gunn got. I think it would be very bad for them if it was like, oh, they're interfering again.
Well, I mean, also James Wan is a very stubborn director, from what I understand. Like once he gets set in a vision, he's just like, nope, not changing. Yeah. Not going to change. And then unless he like starts selling out the rights to the movies like he did with The Conjuring. Biggest mistake ever. But that's for a different show.
That's for your horror show, bud.
That's for my show. I'll get into that later.
See what else we got.
So going back to Marvel again, since Marvel is like the big dog in comics right now, I like comic adaptations at least. They've added 4 new release dates to their schedule. February 16th, 2024, May 3rd, 2024, July 26th, 2024, and November 8th, 2024. And now this sort of solidifies my theory. Where we were going through the roadmap of Marvel a couple weeks ago, or like last month, I think it was when we did it. We know Fantastic Four is supposed to be the cap of Phase 4, right? Phase 4 or Phase 5?
4.
I mean, they haven't really said officially.
Right.
There hasn't really been an official like, okay, this is going to be the end of Phase 4. They've been very vague and just kind of like, I'm not answering that.
So I think they've announced enough stuff that keeps people interested for that run, but they're waiting to announce the titles of these things as those characters are revealed in these movies. So we're going to get some big reveals that's going to change where this whole roadmap's going, because we were like speculating like where's Kang going to show up, who's going to go here, what's the deal with the multiverse, etc., etc. And I think these new movies that they're about to announce in 2024 are going to be like those big capstone movies for all these storylines.
I still have my top 2 that I'm waiting to hear be released.
I mean, I think it's all but like everyone knows one of those has to be Shang-Chi 2. It's just the right amount of time. They announced these dates right after the success of Shang-Chi. I think they were waiting. Obviously, I think they had plans to do a second one, but they wanted to see how the first one did. And obviously did well enough. It at least has a really good, positive conversation with it. So I think it's definitely one of those.
I mean, it moved Venom 2 up in the release dates.
I think it's like a 50-60% chance that May date is the next Avengers film.
Yeah,
Makes
they usually
sense.
like to keep it around May.
Because
Yeah,
it's been a very long time since the last one, and they wanted a really big gap. So that's like 5 years. And I think Feige just recently commented on that's about the amount of time. And so like it would either be 24 or 25 when we get an Avengers film,
Hmm.
yeah,
like
I
a
can see that.
proper Avengers team up.
Yeah, because they're all kind of, for the most part, either dead or scattered.
I mean, they're still
And
kind
I
of in
mean,
shambles after Endgame. They're all picking up the pieces. So
we'll probably
Yeah.
get Young Avengers before that, but I don't think that will be a movie. I think that will be a show, as most of the Young Avengers are being introduced in the shows.
Yeah,
true.
that would make more sense.
I'd,
Yeah,
I'd be more
I want
likely to
one.
follow a Young Avengers show than a movie.
I want one of those dates to be either Nova or Adam Warlock.
Well, I would kill for Nova, but I don't know when
Mhm.
that's happening. But I would literally,
Yeah.
I'm literally
Would
wearing
you
a
would
Nova-
you see them using? Would you see them using
No.
Richard Rider or Sam Alexander?
I really, really hope Richard Rider. That would be the smart move.
Yeah.
It's a very smart
Um,
move.
I could see why they would use Sam Alexander. I think it would be the wrong move, but I know
Yeah.
why they would do it. I mean, I love Richard Rider, so like I just have to hope
Yeah.
and pray that's
Yeah.
that's the
I mean,
one.
it
they'll
makes
choose.
sense because
And I don't-
Xandar has been decimated.
I don't have any issue with Sam. What I have an issue with is choosing Richard Rider like last over him, or I'm sorry, reverse that. Choosing like Sam first. I think
Yeah.
it's a very bad idea. I mean, they can both coexist, and I have no issues with that. I just think Richard Rider should be the first and
First.
kind of major one,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and have Sam either come under him, even maybe even the same movie. That's fine. I mean, they're gonna change the narrative of both of them at least a little
Kind of
bit.
do like a Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel kind of thing.
Yeah. And that's fine as long as Richard Rider is part of that focus. It just feels
Yeah.
wrong to focus first on a different Nova, especially since Sam's origin in the comics is very just needlessly complicated, convoluted, like really off the beaten track for no reason. I mean, there were real life reasons as to why it was very specifically disconnected from everything that was Nova.
Right.
But they just also never really explained it.
Yeah.
And so Marvel is going to go and change that when they get to the character and have it a little bit more seamless.
I think if I had my pick of what movie would be in one of those dates, I'd like to see an official X-Men movie in the MCU, because I know we have the Mutants, which is supposed to be coming out, but it's not officially tied to the X-Men.
Or
I
so they
think
say.
so they say. I think if they're going to introduce mutants, either whether it's via the Eternals or the mutants or whatever they're going to do, I think one of those dates that they do should introduce the X-Men. Because I mean, if they're already leading into things like Kang, the Conqueror, and potentially Galactus, maybe Doctor Doom with Fantastic Four, we have no idea what they're doing with those movies.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the time to introduce at least the X-Men in the MCU, get their cast set, because these plot lines are going to start getting a lot heavier. They've already done Thanos, they've done the Infinity Gauntlet. Like, that big story has been done.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to go bigger, they have to introduce bigger, more notable characters, I think, in order to be successful and keep things going. So having like a young X-Men kind of team starting in the MCU where they have the rights to their characters and everything would be a smart move around this phase.
Right. Here, real quick, I got a knock on the door. Do you mind taking the next two news spots real quick?
Yeah, I got you. I'm gonna do the news spot that he wrote.
Do it.
And he's not here. All right, so Marvel drops the first official Hawkeye trailer, and it's Christmas, y'all.
He's
really
not
wanted-
gonna be here to see that you did that.
He wanted me to say that line so bad, and he's not here to see it. I'm so satisfied, and that's the only reason I said it.
Well, what did you think of it?
I don't know. I kind of agree with what Xander was telling me earlier. Like, I rewatched it again before the show, and it gives me very heavy Die Hard vibes. Which conflicts me now that I know that it's set in Christmas, because Die Hard was also set at Christmas, and then there's the whole "is it a Christmas movie" debate. For this for the sake of my head, I have to say that it's not a Christmas movie.
Well, you're right. It would be a Christmas show.
No, I was talking about Die Hard, but Hawkeye.
Die Hard's definitely a Christmas
show.
movie.
I'm telling Meg, you said that.
Someone asked me, is like, what do you think about Hawkeye being a Christmas story? And I'm like, I mean, I don't care. It's about Christmas. It's probably going to be whatever the same quality is that we were going to get anyways.
I say it's going to move out of focus of it being Christmas very quick.
Yeah.
With Hawkeye being the main character and
possibly, right? But what if it takes place in a very small amount of time? You can't really move out of Christmas.
Well, like, yes, it's set during Christmas, but it's not like it's a Christmas special where it's like Hawkeye's fighting to save Christmas spirit. Then we're not getting that. Where everybody's saying like it's a Christmas show. Like it's not.
Oh no, the Kingpin is stealing Christmas.
Kingpin stealing Christmas. We have to.
He just robbed the Macy's with the tracksuit mafia.
Kingpin held up a Macy's on Christmas Day. That's the premise of Hawkeye.
Yeah.
I would stop watching Marvel for a bit if that were the case. I'm not gonna lie to you.
That's actually what makes me nervous about the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special.
Okay, but that's a team in the universe that's like ridiculous enough to handle that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm just scared of another Star Wars.
The story needs them to be.
Yeah,
that's fair.
It depends on how they do it.
That's fair. You got a point.
You got to set it up right, and if you don't, well, it's gonna show.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Next idea. Let's pitch this to Marvel. Somebody get Marvel on the phone. I want Holly Jolly Christmas Thanos.
I mean, can you imagine like the Punisher getting stuck with the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Oh my God.
I can, and I hate it.
Like, and I don't know. You always have people go, "Oh, like this world can never mix with that," and I'm like, I mean, it can.
It can.
Like
they have.
In the real world, right? We're having fun doing this podcast, but someone's dying in a different state. It's like those are happening at the same time. It's just like different worlds. Like, I mean, it's a bleak, real example, but it's just like storytelling. Like, you can have people dealing with super hardcore, serious stuff, and they could just have a different story with some crazy, insane people.
Yeah,
that's true.
I
so they
never
can
thought
do
of it that
anything
way.
they want.
Realism.
Wow.
So now that I'm back, Eternals.
Line.
I did. Did you say it? Did you say?
I did.
You said it's
good.
It. Oh yes.
Rewind.
So Eternals will get a similar release treatment following the success of Shang-Chi, with a 45-day theatrical release before coming to Disney Plus. Yeah, I mean, I
think they should do that for all their films.
Yeah, but so one thing I'm not too clear on, I just haven't really been paying attention because I've just been focused on going to see it in theater. But when they do release it to Disney Plus, are they releasing it on Premier Access?
After that 45 days, it would be free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's what they've done with all the Premier Access. Like the premieres on Premier Access for a set amount of time. I think it's typically 45 days, and then it goes away for like a month. And then comes back as free access. And I think instead of them doing Premier Access, it'll be on there for free. I mean, it's basically the Blockbuster model, only sped up. Because what they would do before, movie release in theaters, it would be a 2-month gap to put the movie into production, like for printing. They'd have to get the movie printed either on tape or DVD, however the format was, and then ship it to all the video rental stores for them to be rented for a set amount of time. And then it would come out on DVD.
Okay.
So now we're cutting out the middleman because you don't have to produce the film onto a physical media. You could just send it as a file to a streaming service.
Just gonna send it.
Send it. So I mean, it's an accelerated Blockbuster model, is all it is.
Okay.
So instead
what are
of
your guys' thoughts on Eternals? I'm like still kind of iffy because I don't know too much about the Eternals. I know about them in passing from previous reads.
How
much
like
did you know about Shang-Chi before you watched it?
I knew a decent amount.
Okay. That's not even a usual, like, you're one of few. A lot of people don't know anything about him. But
I didn't know jack diddly about him, honestly. I had to do a little bit of research before going in.
Marvel, like, they talked about him like he was this very big, like, super big character in the comics. And I'm like, I had trouble finding runs to read about him.
Yeah.
Like he's not that big, and it's no comment on the quality of the character, but like that's just to show Marvel's able to pull these characters out of obscurity and then make
I mean,
them like
he's
make
just now getting graphic novel reprints of his comic. I mean, he got a new comic run when the new era came out, when they started doing like the big, like the post Carnage reboot that they were doing.
like
When all the new series came out, they started a new Shang-Chi run, and now all of his old comics are being reprinted in graphic novel form, like just within the last month because of the movie.
like for Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Obviously, no one really knew about them, but in the comics, like they were still pretty big. So like they were probably I don't know 5 times bigger than Shang-Chi was at any point in
Yeah,
the comics
I would
at
agree with
that
that.
point.
Yeah.
And so that's the like Guardians were considered obscure at that point, and now they just like went even deeper with Shang-Chi. And I would say Eternals are probably at a similar level.
Mhm.
Some could probably argue they're a little bit more known, but they're really not that active in the comics either. So
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
I
gonna be
think they're
just
gonna
interesting
try
how
and
that plays out.
you know,
I think they're gonna try and use the Eternals as like a shaping point for the rest of this phase. It seems like a lot of the stuff that they've been dropping, like hint wise, in some of these movies, it keeps pointing back to some of the little things we've gotten in the Eternals trailer. Like the post credit scene for Shang-Chi very closely points to the weapons the Eternals have. Like
Yeah, I would.
it
That's my
possibly.
theory.
possibly.
my
I mean,
theory.
No,
it's a theory.
I think it's pretty. Personally, I think it's pretty clear that that those bands, like in the comics, he's got a very close connection with Fin Fang Foom, who's actually an alien race, and the Ten Rings are actually technology from his alien race in the comics.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that whatever that beacon is calling to that race. And it was actually there was a pretty clear clue about it. The mother, when she's telling the story, she says it was she couldn't remember if the rings were found in a tomb or in a crater, both of
Yeah.
which directly reference Fin Fang Foom's history on Earth.
Right.
Both entombed, and he fell for space. Um,
Yeah,
and so
and then
there are a
going
lot of
back on what
heavy
you said
hints.
about pulling things out of obscurity, like my biggest thing where I was leaning towards the Eternals was the fact that I was like, they're not gonna bring in Fing Fang Foom. Like they're not gonna do that. And then I realized, well, they did bring in a giant dragon and a big like Cthulhu-esque monster.
We have
So,
a talking raccoon as a main character. Like, come on,
yeah,
they can do anything. There's nothing that Marvel can't do. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll even see them say, "Oh, this would look good." I'm like, "Would it though? Like, come on. If you want to
Yeah.
do it that way, you can do it that way. Just make it work."
They have the budget, they have the resources. They can make just about anything happen. I mean, we're
Yeah. So
seeing
even
that.
Marvel falls for that. Even like they fall for the like, "Oh no, this would look too silly." It's like, and not if you do it right.
Right.
yeah.
You could take things and put it in a certain style. I mean, if you look at like I know it's obscure, but if you look at the way the Great Protector was portrayed in the comic books, he looks kind of dumb, like
Mhm.
color wise. And they took the same coloration of the Great Protector, put it on a big screen, and it was badass.
I was really sad that they didn't have any direct references to like to Iron Fist and
Yeah,
his stuff,
Yeah.
Shao Lao and all that. I was like, come on, guys, it's the easiest thing in the world. You have the setup, and like the aunt is going over like, oh yeah, we used to have other cities and other people and blah. I'm like, just
I'm
say
like,
it. Just
are
say
you not going to
something.
reference the canopy of heaven at all?
Yeah,
I mean,
something.
they're
Come on.
talking about the great cities of heaven.
It's like
Mention Kunlun,
slightly
please,
set up the next movie where he meets Iron Fist, please. Thank you.
please.
yeah. Everyone that I've talked to after watching Shang-Chi, they're like, okay, now we need Iron Fist in the MCU. They're like,
Yeah,
just
so
give it
now
to
we
us.
know that they can do it. So recast Iron Fist.
My issue with that is, and I have this fear that if they try to bring in if they do bring in Iron Fist, it's going to overshadow what they just did with Shang-Chi. Because
I don't
Iron
think
Fist is
so.
way more popular of a character. Like people know who Iron Fist is, whether it be through one of the games or a comic, because there were a lot more popular comics
His show
than
did a lot
Shang-Chi.
of damage to his image. The show wasn't
It
good.
did. And the show
Yeah.
wasn't good at all.
And Shang-Chi only makes it look worse. And so I don't think he is going to fall into that trap. I think Marvel would be pretty well aware of that if they decide to use Iron Fist. It's probably why he hasn't showed up yet, and there's really no direct signs that he will show because they want to keep the attention Shang-Chi, but I
Yeah.
feel like it's an inevitability. Like you gotta bring Iron Fist in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
eventually. Okay, let's shift over to DC for a little bit. The DC Injustice trailer has dropped, and it has me nervous.
Yeah. When I saw it, I mean, because it is going straight to DVD,
Yeah.
but it legitimately had that straight to DVD feel.
Yeah, but a lot of DC's animated properties feel that way. Like
Yeah,
when they released the first trailer for Batman Ninja, I was like, but it ended up
Yeah.
being really good. But this just doesn't have that same kind of feel. Like I wanted it to have like Darkseid's Apocalypse War kind of
Mhm.
feel, or Constantine City of Demons, because
Yeah.
Injustice is a dark storyline.
I
Yeah.
love the games. The story in the game is great, and
Oh,
I've
it's
read like the
phenomenal.
first run of comics, and that's great.
The comics run is amazing too. If they just directly adapted that into a movie or a show, perfect. Would have been
Mhm.
lovely. But I don't think they're doing that, and
I
that's what
also
has
don't
me
really
concerned.
I don't like DC's animation. I think it's as dull and boring as you can possibly animate something, probably because it's super cheap to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like I know that Invincible is a quality show and a lot of people love it, and I will get around to watching it. But one of the things that turned me off was that they just like they have this boring animation style. I'm like, you could have done so. You could have chosen something like added some flair. Like I know their style is blood and guts. To me, that's not really like it's the same dull animation. You just happen to be ripping out body parts.
Mhm.
It's like
And
some people.
I will agree with you to a certain extent with Invincible as well, because there are moments where like kind of like the like the flying and floating and stuff like that, where it's just like very static looking. There's no extra,
It's yeah. It's not a statement on the show's writing, the story, the
Mhm.
characters. It's solely the animation. I feel
Yeah.
like they easily could have chosen something visually unique that's like you see it and go, okay, that's Invincible.
Yeah.
It's like What If has a style where it's like that's What If. And I know some people might have some issues with it, but I feel like it's also better like they have a visual like a unique palette
Yeah, like a
that they
unique
can also
visual
improve
identity.
down the line if they have any issues with it. But like
Yeah.
you see that you go, that's What If, but you could throw a random clip of Invincible. Some people wouldn't really know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's what's kind of kept me from catching up with the show. But I will do it at some point.
Oh yeah, the writing's amazing. It is an
The
amazing
story,
show.
the story is worth getting past the animation for
Yeah.
100%. And then the next bit of DC movie news that we have is we're getting a Matt Reeves Batman spinoff starring the Penguin for HBO Max. It's now in early development. Not a
That's
lot of details
exciting.
have been coming out for that. I mean, it's
Is it though?
To me, because I like Colin
It's,
Farrell. I like
I mean,
Colin
he's
Farrell.
great. I'm just completely over the whole let's make a show about Batman, but we can't talk about Batman. I am
and then it
so
ends
over
up
that
Yeah.
mindset.
and then it ends up being Batman anyway.
Yeah,
Because the
every show
show's
has
not
done it.
successful without
Titans,
Batman.
and they have to do some version of like Bruce Wayne, Batwoman, all of them. And it's not just Batman. Like they did it with Supergirl, with Superman, and it got so ridiculous that they were like, we have to really fight to get Superman in this. It's just like
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
hate the mentality. Like you're like,
Yeah.
don't make the show if you can't talk about all the things you need to talk about.
I mean, it got to a point with Supergirl where it was like, okay, Superman's more popular. Let's give him his own show. So now they got Superman and Lois, and it's their most successful show.
It also
Yeah.
looks different. It's got a different style.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know it's Superman and all. I don't know if it's just Superman that makes it more successful. I think that show definitely ventured out and tried to do at least make itself unique amongst the Arrowverse show because a lot of people don't like the style that they have, which one could argue there's not too much style. It's just kind of cheap production.
Not
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, and
I
now
we'll get into that. That's a planned future episode, I think.
Yeah.
Um, I could talk for hours on like how I would redo the Arrowverse from scratch.
yeah, there are a lot of issues in it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Except I love Reverse Flash, so I don't know if they can ever go wrong with him. He's great.
Reverse Flash, and they did Zoom proper. I mean, he was different, but I like the way they did Zoom.
And that's it.
This is
Oh,
big
it
things.
did right with the
That's
Flash.
it.
I liked Flash mostly for a while, and then it just kind of fell.
I don't know. It was pretty clear that Arrow was the dominant show for like the first.
Even though
3
he was
seasons.
basically Batman.
But it also just was really bad at points.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
And then
absolutely.
it got a little better, and then it just got stale.
Yeah.
The weird thing with me was like Arrow had like it would have like one really good season and then like a really shitty season to follow it, and
I
then
like
try and
that
pick
though.
it back.
Season 2 was great.
Season 2 is phenomenal. So their first
Mhm.
3 seasons were great, and they did. I think it was season 4 where they started introducing magic, and it was like, okay, we can't do this. This is weird.
Mhm.
Was
I
3
think
what? Okay, I want to just argue that statement real quick. It wasn't bad because magic and weird. It was bad because the writing was bad.
Well, that too.
Like,
They wrote everything
Arrow
horribly.
can interact with people with magic. He does it all the time in the comics. Like, it's
Well,
not
I know that, but
Yeah.
they handled it poorly.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they did.
So it wasn't. It
100%.
was. I'll rephrase. It wasn't
Yeah.
the subject matter. It was the way they handled the subject matter.
Well, I defend that because I'll see showrunners saying stuff like that. It's like, oh, you wanted to veer away from. It's like, why? Like these characters interact with things that are very outside of their own world, and that's
Yeah.
part of the fun. You just have to be able to handle it, and if you can't, it shows even in your interviews.
Yep. Let's see here. Last little bit of news that we have here is Oscar Isaac's Moon Knight reportedly adapting the Mr. Knight costume along with his classic outfit. That will be interesting. I actually remember the first time I ever saw the Mr. Knight costume, or the whole outfit, like the suit and tie and then the mask. I was like, what is this? It literally made me buy my first issue of Moon Knight. Like that, I was like, this is actually kind of cool looking.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, I never
Actually-
doubted it. I didn't think that there was any kind of question. Like, his personalities have to be in it. That's part of his character. It would be very strange not to have it. So, like, I saw that and I was like, I mean, it's good to have a semi. It's not a confirmation because it's still a rumor, but it's a reliable one. So it's
Mhm.
good to know that it's probably going to happen. But it's just like I assumed it was going to happen anyways.
Yeah, I thought we were just gonna get the just the classic suit and they're just gonna call it a day.
So this isn't like a Netflix show.
That's true. That is true. But I think that wraps up our nerd news. Now we're gonna go into a little bit of what we've been getting into in the past week. We touched on a couple of things with you, Russ. Jagger, what about you?
Funny enough, I just finished rewatching Arrow.
Oh, I'm so sorry for you.
Well,
Oh,
okay,
man.
so I do this thing where my commutes to work get rather boring because I drive a couple hours, or I'll drive like 1 or 2 hours, sit in the parking lot for a while, and then have to go into work. So I was getting into the habit of like music was getting boring, so I was throwing on shows that I've seen and just like setting my phone on my dashboard to listen to the show. So I started rewatching all the old Flash seasons because I was like, I'll rewatch Flash because I don't remember what happened in the early seasons anymore. And the last season's about to start, so I'll rewatch it. And I got like most of the way through it, I'm like, I should rewatch Arrow. This show sucks. And I remember Arrow being a lot better. So then I went into Arrow again, and I'm like, okay, I remember the dips and I remember the turns, but I remember a lot less from Arrow than I remember from Flash because like the seasons were so long ago. So I'd been rewatching all the shows, and I was like, well, do I rewatch the other ones? And I looked at the episode list for Legends of Tomorrow, and I was like, nope, I can't do this to myself.
I
Not
mean,
again.
the first season of Legends of Tomorrow is terrible.
All of the seasons of Legend of Tomorrow are terrible.
They actually had one or two that was pretty good. Then I just stopped watching for no particular reason. And
I
like
was
pretty
so
good is
bad.
relative. It's all relative.
Yeah.
But like it was fun. It knew it had a better grasp of what it was, which I don't think the first season knew.
Yeah.
I think it was just very rough, and I was like, "This is terrible. Why did
Yeah.
they do this? Why did we waste these characters in this random team up that shouldn't exist?"
Yeah, exactly.
And I still think that, but I mean, it doesn't matter because the show exists. So some of
Yeah.
the seasons were okay. After I
It's
was like,
still
"Well, it
going
happened."
and it's still going on for some reason.
It just feels too campy for me. I don't know why.
It definitely it can be.
But it
pretty
knows
campy.
it's campy.
Like I don't
like,
love it. Like it's not a favorite.
Yeah.
It would never make it on like a top 100. But
Right.
It's like sitting back and watching B horror movies. You don't
Yeah.
like them, but you watch them anyway because why the hell not?
Looks like Charles here in chat is a fan. At least of the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
he's
sorry,
talking-
but I can agree about the second, I think, but not the
I think
first.
I think he's talking about the Flash.
Oh,
okay.
okay. Well, if it's the Flash, then yeah, I love the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
What about you, Xander? What have you been
For
getting into?
me, the only thing really has been What If. I've been keeping up on that, and I gotta tell you, dude, I'm gonna go ahead and put up the spoiler alert real quick again, in case you haven't seen the last episode of What If. What are you doing? It's been almost a week now. You should have seen it, but I was kind of let down, honestly,
It was
because
not good.
when I
wasn't
first
good.
heard that What If was doing Marvel Zombies, that was my most like sought after episode. Like I cannot wait for this episode. And then it finally came, and it just it was probably by far the worst episode of What If so far.
Yeah, I think it was dumb. They took the concept on face value, didn't think about it, and just did things.
Yeah.
If they'd really thought about it, they could have easily just did What If as a whole thing, seen how it did, and then taken the Marvel Animation Studios, done the same style,
And
but
like
did a
done a
Marvel
legit
Zombies series.
Yeah.
And you
could've
have to
taken-
think about it. I mean, like, and also, I'm never not going to be mad about that last shot.
Yeah.
I don't know who in their right mind wrote down Thanos with 5 Infinity Stones gets bit by a zombie. Like,
Yeah.
what? No, he doesn't. That's not a thing. There's no world or timeline where that's a thing.
Just change reality so he doesn't get
Yeah.
Yeah,
bit.
it
That's
was.
all it.
And like, even just you think about it, how did Iron Man in his full armor get bit?
Exactly. I don't
It-
understand that either.
Stuff like that you have to show. Like, you have to not just like a quick like, oh, they're being attacked by zombies. You have to. There's things where you're going to question, and you have to show how exactly that character got into that situation that allowed that to occur.
Exactly.
Maybe there was
Yeah.
a sacrifice moment, but like, you have to show it, or it's an issue because it's
Like-
too
like
big of a
how
question.
how did Peter Parker survive, but Steve Rogers didn't?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got
I mean,
Vandal in
I
chat saying
can
show your
understand how-
work. And Charles, yeah, coming off the best episode, like the week prior, that was by far my favorite episode so far.
I
the
think
Doctor-
three's my
the Doctor-
favorite still. I love
Three's your
three.
favorite still?
Fury's
three
Big Week was
The murder
yeah, Fury's
mystery.
Big- yeah, the
Fury's
murder
Big
mystery
Week.
one.
That's still my favorite.
I was like,
loved
this
it.
is going like balls to the walls. I love it.
Yeah,
It's like
Great.
they just took the concept of the show and they utilized it to its fullest extent, and I was like, this is great.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's easily my second favorite. I loved the Doctor Strange episode mainly because of how dark it really got. Like I was just like, oh, this is what Marvel kind of needs. Like we
Yeah,
haven't
but
really gotten that like dark aspect. So I
Did
kind
he
of like
really
that.
die though?
No, I don't think he's dead. I think he's still.
It's a little misleading because it definitely feels like okay, that was the end of that universe, but like they haven't been shy in showing footage from future episodes, which clearly features a team up, including the Dark Strange that we followed.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe the Watcher just pulls them at the last moment because of whatever's happening at the end of
Yeah.
the season. Who knows? But
Yeah,
So
there's a reason why the Watcher is the host of the show. Like
Mhm.
he's done his meddling before. Like we know he doesn't just watch. He does his things.
but that's
You're
his
saying,
name.
are you telling me he's Uatu the doer?
Did they name him?
I
he
don't
just
think
I
they.
know we
yeah,
know that name, but
Yeah.
I think they just called him the Watcher.
Yeah, they just call him the Watcher.
Yeah, they just call him the Watcher.
Interesting. I wonder if
So-
they'll name him by the end of the season.
I hope
probably.
so. I hope so.
I mean, they're already slated for a second season,
Yeah,
from what I understand. So
yeah. Although I'm thinking maybe they could potentially retcon this zombie episode.
I mean, it's an alternate timeline. You can literally do it like you don't even
Yeah.
need to retcon. You'd be like, this is just a shitty timeline. We don't need to reference.
Yeah.
This is the darkest time.
Yeah, you don't have to
Dark
put
timeline.
any effort into
They
it.
all-
Just be like,
They all
no,
have
we're
your
doing-
goatee.
We're telling a different zombie storyline here. Like
Yeah.
it came from a different place.
yeah.
And can
it's a diff-
and
it's a
can we
different
actually
zombie
have
one.
the hunger and not a quantum virus? That's another thing that bugs me. They did the stereotypical thing where they just stick quantum in front of a word and just run with it. Like,
quantum virus?
yeah, well, guess what? I have
They
a
really
quantum
should've just
foot
made
that
everyone
shakes
really
every 5
small.
seconds.
It wasn't great. I feel like a lot of people, and like people like what they like. That's fine.
Mhm.
But I feel like a lot of people just didn't get past the fact that like they had fun watching Marvel zombies. Like as I view it, at a pretty shallow form. But like a lot of people just were like, "Oh, we got zombies. This is fun."
Yeah.
And they didn't bother to look further.
Yeah. What about you, Russ? We touched a little bit on some stuff earlier on in the show, but did you get into any other comic-related stuff this week?
Comic-related stuff. I don't. Well, besides, we all watched What If, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's been a very busy week. I had a friend's wedding that it was really like a 3 or 4 day affair.
Okay.
And then just
love
writing
that.
a bunch of articles for the
Okay.
a certain website that I work at.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that one website. The one website.
The one with
that
the
is a website.
.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you got it. You can find it from there.
Yeah. Just search .com, chat. Search .com, you'll find it.
That one website.com.
Let's see. Ooh, Charles in chat. When's the Spider-Man becoming Punisher episode? That would actually be pretty cool to see.
Oh yeah, what would Spider-Man have to lose for that? I mean, he's already lost his parents.
Probably.
I don't
He's
think
lost
anything
everybody.
May would
I would
do
I
it.
would assume like losing Aunt May shortly after losing Uncle Ben, or
Look,
maybe
if I
maybe,
lost
like-
Hot Aunt May too, I would lose my shit.
It
If we're talking
definitely
about
wouldn't be
if we're
just
talking
for-
about Tom Holland Spider-Man, if I lost that Aunt May,
I think
Jesus.
it would need to be a quick succession of deaths with the personal. I mean, obviously that's personal, but like I think the person doing it would probably have to have some tie to him already, like
Yeah.
betrayal. Like you need a lot of stacking elements for Peter to snap like that.
Yeah.
like
Um,
Ned becoming Hobgoblin or some shit like that.
Oh god.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like there's like one thing after another, and also all of them being done in a way that he could probably misconstrue it as all being his fault.
To be fair, I mean the weight of the world's already on his shoulders, so
Yeah.
as
Weight
is.
of the-
I mean, it's a superhero thing. They're all carrying it.
Yeah, that's true.
I think at
That
this
is
point,
true.
if we're going characters we already know, I think the only person who could potentially pull that off for a What If episode would be Mysterio.
He's doing a good job so far.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, he's quote unquote dead, but I love Mysterio though, so I hope I see his
Master
face
of
again.
Illusions.
I just love Jake Gyllenhaal. Can we just bring him back? I just want him back. I don't even
I'm
care if
so
he's Mysterio.
sad. I'm so sad that in Far From Home that he was never called Fishbowl Head. I'm like, you had one job, Marvel. God damn it.
Or what was I remember playing the Spider-Man 2 video game, and I remember the first encounter with Mysterio. He meets him, and he's just like, Mysterio, I think I had a bowl of Mysterios for breakfast, like something like that.
Yeah.
God, I miss those. And that's
When he
another
came
thing.
to
He
that point,
doesn't.
it was really serious, and
Mhm.
he wasn't really joking much.
Yeah.
Super serial.
Yeah, that's another thing I miss about Spider-Man that I do want to touch on with Tom Holland Spider-Man, because I'm starting to have gripes with Tom Holland Spider-Man. And one of them is he's not as quippy as like Andrew Garfield's.
See, I would disagree, and I feel
Really?
like I would hold firm in that he is the quippiest Spider-Man. However, right, his Far From Home plot was pretty serious, and it really didn't allow for much room. Like no one could really argue like there's not much quipping in that movie. It's a pretty serious thing that he's going through, and especially
also
when it gets time to fighting Mysterio, like shit's serious.
It's hot
Yeah.
off the heels of everything that happened with Endgame
Yeah.
too. So,
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
That's
Yeah,
a big
you're
world-changing
dealing with
event.
But I mean, he all through Infinity War, even his brief moments at Endgame, he's got stuff, and in Homecoming, I think he's got more quips than either of them. Like,
That's
Tony's
why I
not
really
hard to-
enjoyed Homecoming still, because like he was very quippy in that.
We're
it's
also
just-
dealing with a big character shaping arc of Peter
Yeah.
Parker as a
he's got to
person.
grow up.
Yeah, that's true.
But, I mean, he'll
started
still
as
flip.
he started as a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but now he's being recruited by Tony Stark. He now has his father figure that's teaching him and helping him, and now he's lost that father figure, and now he has to fight Mysterio.
Mm-hmm.
Now
Now
it's
dealing
torn
with
apart
the
his life.
information.
That's also my other gripe: the reliance on Tony, and then from what we're looking at, if the toys have anything to say about it, now we have a suit that's integrated with magic from Doctor Strange. I'm just like, can we have Peter just be him?
I mean, the whole point of I hear that a lot. Like, I mean, it's obviously not an uncommon thing for people to say, but like, do people remember that the very first movie, the entire climax and last act is literally that is Peter proving that he himself is Spider-Man and he can do it without anyone's help. Because
Right,
like
but I
when
want
it's
more.
all
I
laid
just want
out,
more of that. Like, I don't know. That's
I
just
mean, he
me.
kind of has it in Far. He has the moment of Far From Home too. It's like, yeah, he happens to have he can build a suit in the ship, but even if he couldn't do that, he would have been fine. You know.
Yeah,
I
I
think
guess
it
that.
made the Marvel was kind of stuck in like they got Spider-Man to introduce, but they had to do it in a way that we wouldn't have heard of him. And then how do you integrate him in the MCU? It's like, and then they pulled from the comics and Tony and his dynamic, and I think that was a great choice because it also created one of the like the emotional like pillars of the MCU as a whole. And I think that whole kind of mentorship was really well done. As for where it'll go in the future, I don't know, but I did really enjoy the whole Iron Man thing. I do wish that they'd say Ben's name out loud, but that's fine.
Aside from the Marvel
We just needed
zombies.
a zombie episode to say.
Yeah. Oh my God. I don't even like. The first time we name drop Ben is in that episode. God damn. But
I
yeah.
mean, like I could defend all that Iron Man, like I can defend it all day, but at the end of the day, I do really just want them to, just talk about Ben just briefly.
Yeah. And I want Toby Maguire to play the flashback of Uncle Ben just for a quick cameo, just boom. But anyway, let's move on to the meat and potatoes of tonight. The state of nerd culture and comic book adaptations. Basically the connection between the two. So we're gonna start with the past. Like think back to when you were a kid looking at nerd culture. We'll start with you, Russ. What was like your first kind of like introduction into nerd culture, whether it be comics like what we're talking about today, or even like video games or your stereotypical kind of nerddom of sorts.
I mean, like I don't think I could tell you exactly. I could probably give you examples that informed it,
Mm-hmm.
um, and they're all very different. There was a game on PC called Star Wars Republic Commando,
Mm-hmm.
which I have the poster right here. I wish more people loved and knew about it. But that kind of created a true love of Star Wars. And like I obviously had the movies and I watched those, but it was that game that I formed a connection to and all that.
Mm-hmm.
There was another game called Lord of the Rings: Battle for Middle Earth.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Kind of informed that side of nerddom and whatnot, and Lord of the Rings in general. And then it was probably I don't know why it's so hard for me to figure out where all the superhero Marvel comics came from. Maybe it was just always there, but I mean, I definitely at points watched the animated series in the '90s. So I would have to think that even if I don't fully remember it, I'd have to think that was played a big part in making Spider-Man such a like integral part of my life.
Yeah, I can relate to that. In fact, I remember the '90s Spider-Man cartoon being like pretty much my first introduction into Marvel. Jagger, what about you?
A lot of my influence actually came from my uncle. My uncle is a huge Batman fan. So is my dad. Um, but my uncle is a big like comics fan in general, mostly Batman, but a lot of Marvel.
Mhm.
So he got me started on a mix. It was Batman the animated series, which started my love of Batman. The Spider-Man animated show, which was still new at the time when I was watching it, and the old, and I mean old, Incredible Hulk live action TV show
Oh yeah.
with Lou Ferrigno. So it was a mix
That
of
man
those three
annoys me.
things.
Well, I can't believe they do Hulk in CGI. I'm like, look at yourself. It wasn't a good Hulk.
No, but like that, those are like the big three that I remember starting me off at least, and then I just branched off from there, and then there's like wee little 6-year-old Jagger who found a taped over copy of HBO's Spawn, and it just went from there.
That's where you got the dark stuff.
That's where the dark stuff came in, and I got into the deep, heavy stuff. And then and it was kind of funny because my birthday is May 5th. So when all of the big superhero movies are coming out, it was always the first week of May.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So ever since the original X-Men movie came out in 2000, every year for my birthday, I went and saw a new Marvel or DC movie, a comic book movie that came out, because it was like X-Men, X-Men 2, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3. They all came out around my birthday, whether it was like May 3rd through the 5th. It was always one of those days. So that's where it like became ingrained. Like every year I had that, at least that dose of big comic book nerddom. It was on my birthday.
And now, thanks to Marvel and Disney Plus, they're just pumping you full of it.
You know, it's never going to end, which I don't say that sarcastically. I'm fine with it. As long as you
it's my birthday all year long now.
Like, I will only start caring if they're not good consistently. Like, I mean, there's going to be a project that, you know, just doesn't do well or doesn't sit right. Zombies. Mm-hmm. But if it's consistent, that's where there's an issue. But like here and there, it's like it's going to happen when you, especially when you're putting out so many things. Something's going to fall through the cracks.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Now, still sticking in the past. Now, what do you guys remember about you kind of like the mainstream perceptions of nerd culture growing up?
Oh God.
Yeah. It's a sore spot.
Me personally, it was the center for a lot of my bullying. Between that and my size, it was one of the two. Because like I was the kid who unapologetically went to school with like a Batman backpack and Iron Man on my folder and like stickers and comic books and all that stuff. And I had people push, kick me, rip my comic books in half, things like that. Like just for being a nerd. Like I was ostracized for it. Like I was the weird kid who sat under the slide and read Spider-Man and X-Men comics while everybody else wanted to play baseball. Like I didn't give a shit about sports. I wanted to read and write.
Well, you were the better one, clearly. You made the right choice.
Well, yeah, obviously. It's paying off for me now.
You got to read comics.
Yeah, exactly. I became ingrained in stories that are now pop culture. Like all the things that I read when I was younger are now like the most popular things. And if you don't know about it, you're considered weird for not knowing about it because it's the most popular things right now. And I'm like, where was that mentality when I was 7? I was getting the shit kicked out of me for it.
Yeah. Russ, what about you? Because I know you and I knew each other back in like middle school, but we didn't really actually like start like hanging out or like talking to each other until like high school.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of what he said, and I mean like I was bullied, but it wasn't really anything like intense. I mean like sure there was a time or two, but there was definitely like kind of like a there was just the mass kind of mindset against nerddom. So yeah, you were the weird one if you did this or that, and even if it wasn't direct bullying, it would be avoidance or just like not really talk. There's no cues to talk to anyone.
Yeah,
you would be the one that people just kind of don't really go towards.
Yeah, I remember having that a lot too. And I think you might remember this. I don't know, but I remember in middle school, like I was really into Yu-Gi-Oh for a little bit there, and I would want to like spike my hair up. Like he did and stuff like that. I remember what was it, it was our I think he was our geography teacher or something like that, or history teacher, Mr. Keener, I think.
Or Keeler. Like it was one of those two.
Yeah, something like that. I remember just like walking in, and then all of a sudden, like everyone like turned around and looked at me, and they just had that look where it's like, you don't belong here. I was like, oh, this is terrible. Like I just remember that, and then I immediately like you said, the avoidance and stuff like that. Like people just didn't want to associate with me and stuff like that, and like I didn't have like any common ground with anyone else to like start up a conversation. So it was a lot more of just me kind of like keeping to myself, and then like paying attention to what other people are talking about, and obviously when it came into high school, it was like, okay, so this is what people were mainly talking about. Let me just kind of like pick up on that stuff. That way I could maybe make it through high school. Which, I mean, it worked out for a little bit. But yeah, no, the mainstream perceptions in the past of nerd culture were definitely very volatile. Whether it was like straight up bullying or, just avoiding, which is, in my mind is just as detrimental to some people when they're growing up and trying to figure themselves out. It wasn't very popular at all. But now still being in the past, I want to talk about the comic book adaptations of that time, the stuff that we were exposed to. Which, in my memory, the only thing I can really think of other than Spawn was like maybe Blade, or
Yep.
I haven't watched it.
the
I'll watch
critically
it.
acclaimed Billy Zane classic Phantom. I remember that.
Phantom. What about
Yeah.
the old I think it was like 87 Howard the Duck?
Yep.
There's
Yep.
that.
I remember that. Phantom, actually, when I was a kid, when I watched that, I loved it. I
right on the
absolutely
ear.
loved Phantom.
Was I right on the year? Because I'm gonna look that up.
Oh, Howard the Duck?
Yeah.
I think it was
This
87.
small
86. I was
podcast,
It was-
it's
year
almost
off.
as bad as driving.
But no, it was. So, what were your guys' take on the quality? At the time. At the time, what did you think of the quality of comic book adaptations?
I mean, it's even just outside of loving the subject matter, I just was simply young. I didn't really have I didn't have the knowledge and experience to kind of, to actually properly judge a film's or show's quality. Like I would like or dislike something entirely. It didn't even have to do with how good or bad it was. It could have been something
Right.
super strange. And so, in hindsight, obviously, you look at a lot of those, it's like, why did I like that? What's wrong with me?
Is there one back then that it was terrible back then, it's terrible now, but it still holds a special place in your heart? I know that's Spawn for Jagger.
I will defend that movie with my dying breath. It's awful and I love it.
No, I don't think so, because I feel like I'm usually on the other end and like
Mm-hmm.
people defending things because of nostalgia, and me just trying to be like separate the two. And so you can still
Yeah.
like it because of nostalgia, but that doesn't mean it has to be a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I have one other
I'm
one
always
that
on
I,
that side of the argument. It's just like look at it past the fact that you watched it when you were a kid. Like, is it a good thing?
Yeah.
Like, is it written well? Is it acted well?
I have one that I actually like aside from Spawn, because that's just me as like a fanboy. Like I like
Mhm.
anything that I get that can be Todd McFarlane related. So
Mm-hmm.
call it nostalgia, call it fanboying, I don't know. But one that I actually do defend as a legitimately, I want to say good movie, because if I remember it correctly, I still enjoy the film from start to finish. It's the 1989 Dolph Lundgren, The Punisher.
Mm.
Never seen it.
It's enjoyable because it was my first look at The Punisher, and it's not super cheesy, and you get like that like 80s action hero kind of vibe from Dolph Lundgren. I mean, the man cauterizes his own wound with a hot Bowie knife. Kind of awesome.
Yeah. I can see that.
And so I when I first watched it, I had no idea it was a comic book movie. When I rewatched it when I was older, when I was into comics, I'm like, this is a comic book movie, and I had no idea. I just thought it was another movie like Rambo.
Oh yeah.
So
Which
it gives
I'm
off
pretty
that
sure at
vibe.
that time they were trying to kind of keep that, because like Rambo and stuff like that were kind of still kind of hype
Right.
during that time. So
And
they're
Dolph
probably
Lundgren was
trying to
still
keep
on
it
that
in line
like
with
high.
that. But yeah, I still hold Billy Zane's Phantom in high regard just because. Man, I don't even remember like where I was at when I wanted, because I know I wasn't home. I was at like my dad's friend's house and he had it on. It was on VHS too. I was like, this is kind of awesome. He looks like a walking, talking penis, but that's cool.
Well,
Like
now, okay, so how far back are we? What kind of era are we looking at when we talk about the past? Are we gonna go into
Early
like,
1800s.
okay, yeah, I love the talkies. I love the talkie superheroes that we got. No, I'm talking like, are we gonna talk about that late '90s, early 2000s era of bad? And I mean like,
yeah, that's what
legitimately
I'm
bad.
kind of moving. I'm inching closer to. So
I'm pointing directly at Daredevil.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I've never seen it.
Really?
You never saw the Affleck Daredevil? Oh
The
my
only
god!
good thing
you are
about
I
that
got the
lucky.
Netflix one, and I was like, yeah, no, I don't really need to. I mean, I'm sure I will at some point, and I'm sure I would have said that a few years ago. I'm sure
I
there will
think at
be a
this point it would be a good case study, if
The only good
anything.
thing the only good thing to come out of that movie was Michael Clark Duncan as Pinhead, not Pinhead,
Kingpin.
Kingpin.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You see my room. I have that on the
Yeah.
brain all the time.
He's got Hellraiser on the brain. I love it. But
Always.
no, yeah, no, that Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Other than that,
Not much
God
else.
Almighty, it was
The suit wasn't bad. The suit wasn't bad. It was comic accurate. I'll say that
Yeah.
much.
And I'll say they kind of made Ben Affleck a little bit comic accurate with the with like kind of like the reddish hair.
Yeah.
I kind of enjoyed that.
He was pretty close for the era.
Yeah.
But everything else, Colin Farrell as Bullseye, no.
Nope. Don't
Jennifer
like
Garner
that.
as Elektra,
Don't
no.
like that.
So did we know
And
he
then
was clearly destined to be the Penguin instead?
Yeah.
clearly.
Let's see.
But Elektra was Jennifer Garner's Elektra was so bad they gave her her own solo film, which was even worse.
Yeah, I don't know.
A reward for being miserable.
And yeah, I think that actually was still or right around the time where Ben Affleck kind of had hit like a curse surrounding him. Like in the late 90s, early 2000s, he like every movie that he was attached to at the time did very poorly at the box office, if I remember correctly. Like later you had Daredevil, there was Dogma, there was what else? What was the shoot? It was another like Kevin Smith film.
Jersey Girl.
Yep. Like all those movies they just tanked. I remember my dad talking about it too, because like my dad was a huge Ben Affleck fan back in the day.
Man,
He's like,
yeah, 2003. It was everything that he did. So like everything after Sum of All Fears was just bad.
yep.
Because like in 2001 he was in Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, and then we did Daredevil in 2003. Then he did Geely, Paycheck, Jersey Girl, Surviving Christmas, Clerks 2. Everything in like that next 3 years was just bad.
Yep. I think it wasn't until The Town really that Ben Affleck really started like going on the up and up.
Because then he did The Town, Argo, Gone Girl, and he just went up from there. And then he became Batman.
Yeah, that whole era too, though. Like even like Daredevil, and then like X-Men. Looking back on it,
good. I mean, granted, it's been a while.
It hasn't aged well
since I've watched it. I don't remember the last time I saw it, but I guess my memory is that it was still okay. It wasn't notably terrible. I mean, obviously, it's not necessarily comic accurate. That's not really a thing those movies did in that time.
Yeah.
But like X2, I feel like was good, right? Am I remembering this right? Is that not good anymore?
I think I remember liking I remember liking X2 better than the first one. But then I remember hating The Last Stand.
Oh no, yeah. I feel like 3 has always been bad. It was bad when it aired.
That's why the movie stopped after that. That's why they just went to do X-Men Origins, which was arguably
worse. Yeah.
Yeah, but then they did First Class, which was really good.
Well, no, then they did the Wolverine, which was good.
No, I think they did First Class first.
Did they?
And then the Wolverine. I mean, this is a Google search away, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I got IMDb up already.
Because what I'm thinking is
Wolverine was 2013.
First
Class. First Class was 2011.
2011. So yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay, so they did First Class, then the Wolverine, and then they carried on with Days of Future Past, and then Logan.
I mean, all had the timeline that made no sense, and they didn't really put much effort into making it make sense, and nothing being comic accurate really in the slightest. And then one of my biggest issues, we talked about avoidance. Comic book movies did it all the time, and they still do it sometimes, where it's just avoiding the source material. It's like you're making this movie, yet you are actively avoiding the source material that made what you're adapting successful.
But what's crazy is, and that bugs me too, because it's like when people adapt a book. The reason the movie versions of books are so great is because they stay accurate to the source material. They literally have a rough screenplay written for you.
Yeah.
All you've got to do is read it and be like, okay.
And
all
you
I
can
gotta
take
do is add
deviations as
dialogue.
long as you know how to juggle that with like, okay, this is what makes what I'm adapting work, and here are the areas I can play around it. But these things have to stay kind
Right.
of the same.
And the comic book is more advanced than an actual book, in my opinion. It's like,
Because it gives you more freedom.
well, it's already storyboarded for you.
Well,
Right.
yeah.
It's literally taking it a step farther than a script. It's like it's a walking storyboard. All you have to do is look at it like, okay, so that's how that can look. How do we translate that into real life? Can we get that angle with the camera? Can we make that effect on CGI? You can literally just cut pages out of a comic book. Don't actually cut pages out of comic books, people.
Yeah, please don't.
And you have a storyboard right there, and I don't understand why they can't just do that,
I
paste it on the
mean,
screen, and people will love it.
I don't know if it's that simple. I think part of it is what makes it. I mean, there is a clear, obviously, avoidance, which there's nothing complicated about that. They're just being stupid. But when it comes to adapting these things, it can be complicated because they're daunting in that it's both a lot of freedom and also not. It's like no one ever expects a flat out adaptation of a comic book storyline. It's really simply not possible. And so you have to just hope the people making these knows how to pull things together. And clearly Marvel Studios, even with their misses, they generally succeeded. And then they've done kind of what you're talking about. It's like, there will be these really big visuals that they kind of know. And they're like, well, we have to do that at some point. Or like, while we're doing this story, we kind of have to touch upon like this image needs to play out on screen. And so, yeah, it's a juggling act. And a lot of people just avoided the whole juggle. They were like, nah, we don't. We'll just do it over here.
Like one of my favorites, Fantastic Four.
I actually don't really remember the old ones. Visually speaking, I mean, I feel like they must have been at least a little bit like closer than the newest one. I mean, because they had the blue suits and obviously Galactus is not a cloud, but
you actually got a
Yeah,
decent
Silver
on-screen
Surfer.
Doctor Doom.
I feel like I read a rumor, not necessarily recently, but it's come up that like had that series continued, it would have been revealed that like Galactus was in that cloud.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, it's
I heard about that too.
It also depends on how you're doing. I mean, I wouldn't have trusted them to do it back then either way, because like Galactus is a visually confusing character because it's portrayed very odd in the comics. It's portrayed in a way that like you can have a floating big man outside of Earth.
How big is he
Can
really?
also be the size of like a skyscraper. It's like it's very confusing. And I think a lot of comics nowadays have kind of settled on the like, he looks like he looks, but he's not planet sized. He's got a huge ship that he sits on like a throne and he goes around, instead of literally eating planets, he's kind of taking all of their energy, consuming it, balancing it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's definitely a more approachable way of doing that character instead of just a big purple and blue man floating outside of Earth.
That's still kind of wild to see.
Who's his tailor? Who makes his suits for him? I'd like to know.
My biggest thing though, I didn't really like the Doctor Doom in the original Fantastic Four run.
See, I did.
Run as in the movies?
Yeah.
Comics. You said run.
Yeah, no, the movies. But like, I really fell in love with the idea of Doctor Doom being like a ruler of this fictional country and all this other stuff, but then they made it like so that he was like their financial aid of sorts, basically.
I don't know their thought process back then, but like, so let's look at now, right? Obviously, Latveria or how do you say it? Shit,
Latveria.
There's no R. Is there an R? Latveria?
Yeah.
I can picture it in my head. I just can't say it right, clearly. But that place, clearly, that's a very big. Fans love it. It's key to his character. But they're in a weird spot where it's like it's one of two things. Either that's where you start your introduction to Doom, or you have to build to it. I don't really think there's an in between. You build him to there, or you start that like this is where he is right now. And there's always been those theories, and I think it's a pretty great idea, and that the ruins of Sokovia, that's where that grows out of. And I think that would be a really good connective tissue to grab onto. But like, no, that's good.
Going back on that was another one of my theories for the Power Broker.
Yeah, you thought it might have been Doom.
Oh, not
I
yet.
thought it could have been Doom
No.
too, like kind of like making his way up the ranks.
The thing that makes me a little nervous about Doom is realistically where they're at with the MCU currently and where they're going with it, from seemingly going with it at least. They kind of have to give Doom the Ultron treatment, where there's no build up. He kind of has a movie where he just shows up, and it's just like you have to accept that he's this all powerful, basically god level being. Because when we got introduced to Ultron, he was an idea, and then 5 minutes later, he is this massive murder machine that has taken over the internet. And we just have to accept that because that's how Ultron is. That's how he's written in the comics.
Ultron in that movie. I love Ultron in that movie.
I do too. I love Ultron. I think they did him dirty in the end.
The way you were talking, I was like, he's got development. I'm like, it was done pretty okay.
No. He's done pretty okay. But I mean, it's one of those deals where it's like, as a moviegoer, if I walk in not knowing a single damn thing about Ultron, I just have to expect that within an evening of Bruce Banner and Tony Stark tinkering with a computer program, they created this all-knowing, all-powerful hatred murder machine that just now has a vibranium body within another day. Like, if you didn't know a single thing about Ultron, you're like, okay, that's just wild. How? What? They're not that smart, but I mean, in reality, Ultron is that smart.
That's an easy get out. It's like, okay, he learned everything off the internet, and he knows how to move around. It's like,
exactly, and
accept that.
But realistically, if they're gonna do Doom anytime soon, they can't do a build up.
I wouldn't do it soon. I would utilize properties like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and then anything else that's kind of like in that vein to establish Latveria, name drop Latveria a couple times, like the new Sokovia, essentially. Like the ruins of Sokovia becoming Latveria, and then
they almost like this is what I was kind of getting at with my fear. My fear is they're going to give him the Ultron treatment where they're going to introduce him in a movie and he's going to be the villain and then they're going to be done. And then potentially bring him back later. What I want them to do, I want them to give him the Thanos treatment. Tease him for a couple phases. Because they went through 3 phases of movies before Thanos even became an actual threat.
I mean, it depends on your... So, obviously, we're in a whole new era. Marvel has clearly evolved since we've last got Ultron. And so I don't think we're going to get another Ultron. Like, I think we're always going to have that build up. Like, I think, in a sense, Kang is Ultron. But now that Marvel knows what it's doing and it's got this insane output of stuff, it is able to build that throughout different projects. Mm-hmm. And so you get that. And I think there will also be something else that they build up behind the scenes and even bigger that will come out after Kang. Like, I don't think Kang is the end-all be-all threat. He's big, he's powerful, he's scary. I don't think he's like the end game level event. I think he'll be like the Age of Ultron, but it'll feel a lot bigger just because of how the MCU is now. It could very well feel like an Endgame type event just because Marvel knows what they're doing it now. They have so many things. Yeah. So it's going to be a little skewed when it comes to comparisons, but I think the true Endgame event will probably involve Doom.
I think so too. At least I hope so. It's one of those things where I think now Marvel recognizes that the movie market is so volatile that at any moment, interest in their films can tank. Just because pop culture says or somebody says on the internet, it's not popular anymore. We don't like it. So now you're just back to fans like back when the original X-Men films and the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films were coming out. It was just fans and like some casual moviegoers that were going to see them. It's not like the dominant thing in pop culture. That can happen at any moment. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but it's a possibility. And I think they're playing their cards in a way that they want to be able to have another Endgame type event whenever they can. So they're introducing these heavy hitters, like they're teasing Galactus. They brought in Kang, start teasing Doctor Doom, because then they can just say, okay, we're going to finish out this phase and we'll go back to releasing casual movies every couple years.
I don't think, just because of what Marvel Studios is, like, I don't think it's I can't say ever. I'm not gonna. Who knows what'll happen? But I don't think it'll be a sudden thing. It's not gonna just be like, okay, we're just not interested anymore.
Right. I know that, but I mean,
it's a different kind of era. There's a lot of projects. Obviously, interest can wane, but people also tend to forget that, like, Marvel Studios is very unique in that that's all they exist to do is make these Marvel Studios film. It's not like Warner Brothers and DC, where like Warner Brothers has a lot of other things they worry about.
Mhm.
Marvel Studios is just Marvel. That is all they are there to make. And so because of that, we'll probably still be getting projects after, like, that big interest has waned. It'll get maybe a little smaller, but we're gonna
Right.
get that outflow for a while.
Oh yeah.
And they're also Disney, which just gives them more money. So it'd be even harder for that interest to go down.
Plus, they've done a pretty good job of bringing in both new and old actors and actresses. Like with Eternals coming up. You got names like Salma Hayek and Angelina Jolie, and I think that is going to be their kind of key to bring in the mainstream viewers and moviegoers and stuff like that, but also retain their core fan base, which is like people like us, because we're just gonna eat up that content regardless. But then if they have a fear that interest is waning, they could bring in another big name actor and be like, oh hey, I really like that person, let me go check that out, and then that interest is peaked again.
Yeah, I mean, Marvel's in a pretty good, like, it's kind of a spot that can't fail. Like, there needs to be something big. Like, they survived COVID, and that's pretty big.
Yeah.
So who knows what's going to knock them off that throne, if anything. Whereas DC is just trying to remain afloat because, well, they don't have a Disney, and they also didn't get the best footing to begin with. So they're just kind of always playing catch up, and they probably always will. We can hope that we get some hits here and there.
I am looking forward to the Batman, though. I really do want to see that. I want a dark and gritty Batman that's focused more so on the detective work. But that's just me.
I think it'll be great, for the record, before I finish my sentence. Like, I think it'll be really good. At the same time, I think it's a step back because it is another case of avoidance where they're now going out of their way to make it not the comic book. And it's like, you can have dark and gritty with the comic book elements because those comic books were dark and gritty.
Yeah.
So you don't need to go like reinvent the Riddler completely. And I'm saying this, and I may very well like the Riddler in this movie, but these words remain true in that it's not the Riddler from the comics, and there wasn't really a reason to change him,
Yeah, that's true.
Because the Riddler in the comics was very sadistic.
Yeah,
I mean, he wasn't a big joke. He was crazy. It was absolutely crazy. I loved it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to
Like, especially
avoid
when Greg Capullo was writing the Riddler, it was.
And you can still have Paul Dano play that character too. I've seen it.
Yeah.
Like, that would be great. But I still think that this iteration is going to be fun to see. But we've kind of moved into the present, and obviously we've touched on the popularity of it now, how it's grown. And so I just want to touch on this. How much are you laughing at the folks that made fun of you for being into this stuff back in the day? Because now we're seen as like the resident experts on this stuff.
I'm not laughing. I'm living. I'm just
there you
like,
go.
I mean, I got nothing wrong here. Like, I'm myself. I'm not like this is how it should be. It's like I can love comic books and all that, and they can just doing stereotypes. They can love sports. All of these things can coexist, and there you go. That's how it should be.
Jagger, what about you?
I am laughing my fucking ass off because those same people who used to give me so much shit for reading all the time and for diving so deep into not only just comic books, but like horror movies, anime, all of it, video games. They're the same people who are in my DMs like, oh, I hear you got a show talking about horror movies. Can I be on it? I love horror movies. I'm like, oh, really? Now you like horror movies. Now you want to be my friend. No. You can go somewhere.
Horror movies as well, by the way. I hadn't mentioned it yet because it wasn't like, but I'm a good horror movie lover as well.
Yeah, so. I think I mentioned that to Jagger a couple days ago. I was like, oh yeah, he might be a good person to talk some horror movies with.
Yeah,
because I remember, I think I remember back when we were doing Taken Over. I came over to your place and you had like the big like xenomorph like statue or something like that.
Oh, the face hugger. I did have a face.
Oh yeah,
hugger.
the face hugger. Yeah, it was the face hugger.
But it was Saw was my first love with
Oh,
horror.
okay.
And I love it to death. And yes, I know they're not all amazing movies, but I'll never not love it. It's my favorite horror franchise.
I used to trash talk the series as a whole because I was the person who was like the first three are the best, everything else is garbage. I recently went back and rewatched them all, and the overarching story is actually brilliant.
It's such a fun, convoluted continuity. It's just like
it is. Once you get to if you watch from 1 to the final chapter, like before they start doing like the prequel stuff and everything, it's like the overarching story that's in the background of this whole thing. I'm like, wow.
Mhm.
I love Jigsaw too. A lot of people
Jigsaw.
hated it. I was like,
Jigsaw was fun.
I don't know why people hated this as much as they did. Like a lot of people were like, it's so convoluted, but I'm like,
did you not see the first 8 films?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can play that like the Saw theme song over anything. I'm just like, I'll be like, yes, it just pumps me.
I think I watched
so-
like 1 through 4, and then like the rest of it. Like, I remember like late at night, just like on like different articles, trying to catch up on like some like story bits and stuff like that I missed out on. Just like because, like you said, like the overarching story is actually very, very fascinating and very just like well done. But back to comics. Back to comics.
I get emotional with that theme. We should just play it right now.
Back to comics. I want to touch on your future thoughts and predictions of just comic book adaptations and nerd culture as a whole. Where do you see this going? Like, I know we talked about waning interests and stuff like that, but ultimately, as a whole, what do you guys see?
Definitely Nova. Yeah.
So I know
Nova.
I know I mentioned
great too.
So I know I mentioned like the waning interest thing, but like I'm honestly I don't see interest waning. I'm just saying that they could be playing things close to the chest because that possibility is there.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's always going to be there, but I don't see it like Russ said, I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
Marvel is going to continue to dominate this whole market with content, and I think eventually if they play their cards right, they can easily go into some of the darker stories. We can get things like another Civil War with like a whatever the 2 new characters are with Captain Marvel on one side and then whatever their other major character is on the other. We could get Fear itself. The Dark Ages just started coming out. They could easily adapt that into a series if they wanted to. Like Russ said, I think DC is always going to be playing catch up unless they make a big bold move and just give certain directors creative control and let them do their thing. Give them do something wildly different. We don't want another Marvel. We already have one Marvel. There's not room for 2 giants.
At the same time, though, I don't want that to come at the cost of the characters on the DC side.
Right. I know. It's
great,
like,
but don't destroy these characters because they need to be different, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I know. It's like the problem I've always seen with like the DC films is that when they were starting to come out, we were getting a little bit of the darker, edgy characters like we wanted because that's what DC is. DC is the darker side of comics. Like, not to say Marvel's not dark. Marvel definitely has its really dark moments. But as a whole, DC kind of presents a more edgier style of hero and vigilantes and whatnot. And we started to get that with the films, and they didn't do as well because of how they were stylistically handled. So they switched gears really quick, and they gave us Justice League really fast. And they rushed their game plan, and they wanted to be Marvel because they wanted to keep up with Marvel, and they failed at it because they're not Marvel.
I mean, BVS wasn't great either. I don't think Man of Steel was great either, too. I think their footing was off. I know a lot of people.
I think Man of Steel was probably the best Superman adaptation we've had so far.
I like Henry Cavill as Superman. I think he's gotten some really bad direction under Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
Like, he was wooden as shit in like BVS, and I was like, I know you can do this role really well.
Well,
but
BVS also
Snyder's
wasn't
doing
about
a terrible
Superman.
job at giving you directions right now.
Yeah, BVS was never meant to be a Superman film, though. Superman was meant to be a side character in that.
Well,
BVS was definitely about Batman, and I honestly think Ben Affleck is one of our better Batman.
I think he's the best Batman. I don't think he's been in a good DC film yet, but he's still the best Batman. And like, it doesn't really matter if Superman's like the key character. he's still there as a character, and he needs to feel like that character, and he shouldn't act like a wooden log.
Yeah.
I was just like, you are so dull right now, and I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. And his name is, Z something.
So, and realistically, what I'd like to see other like studios start to pick up other comic franchises and do well with them. Don't toss them into the ground, because I mean, like, we're seeing some of the smaller studios picking up different series like The Boys, Invincible, so some Image comic stuff, and they're being handled well. And then you see other studios picking things up like Jupiter's Legacy and just rubbing it into the bottom of a dumpster.
That was
and
rough.
Very rough, very upsetting. And between that and now we have a new Spawn adaptation coming out in the next couple of years, actually directed and written by Todd McFarlane himself. I'm excited for that. I want to see these other studios start bringing their franchises to the forefront, but my fear is that Marvel and Disney have become such a giant. They are now the standard for superhero content. And so many different publishers, they have their specific style. Like Dark Horse, so different from Image. So different from DC. DC is not Marvel. Nothing ever compares to Marvel, but now Marvel is the big dog and everyone's going to compare it to Marvel. So anything that comes out in the next few years is going to seem inferior unless it either breaks the mold or lives up to the standard that Marvel is putting forth.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of that is also people misread it. It's like it's not Marvel's problem. It's
right
problem of the people making those projects and also the audience comparing and be like, oh, this isn't
exactly.
Well, it doesn't need to be. Like this isn't like Marvel isn't the bad guy for making all this stuff.
Right. And that's not what I'm saying.
No, I know. I just know a lot of people think that way, and it's just like it's not their fault. It's these other studios need to do their jobs better, and also
you can't blame them for being successful.
Yeah, the audience needs to realize that they shouldn't be expecting the same thing that Marvel's giving.
Right. Yeah, speaking on like Marvel setting the standard, though, I do want to see in the future more of what we're seeing with Marvel and Sony, where you have two completely different studios kind of, reaching an agreement to eventually merge things. At least from what we're seeing right now, they've been rumoring that eventually the MCU Spider-Man and Sony's Venom will eventually meet one day, stuff like that. Sony still retains some rights to Spider-Man in the MCU and stuff like that, and I would like to see more studios reaching agreements and working together to give the fans more of what they want.
Well, so that's not a necessity anymore. The only rights disputes that we had were in Marvel. It was because Sony had rights to Spider-Man and 20th Century Fox had rights to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. Disney bought out Fox, so that's no longer an issue, and Sony and Marvel now have an agreement, so there's no issue there.
Well, Universal still has Hulk hostage to a degree. Clearly, there's some sort of loophole there.
There's a loophole.
You can get She-Hulk, but I'm pretty sure Hulk is still prisoner.
But it doesn't seem to be a big of an issue. I mean, they're still using the Hulk in a lot of their main.
Yeah. They just can't make any solo project for him, which may upset some people. But they just can't do it legally.
I wouldn't trust them to do it right now anyway. I don't think that they do it justice at this point. We're past the point of doing an origin story, and that's exactly what they would try to do. I feel.
No, not now.
No,
well, exactly
not
my point. It's like, what other content do you make? I mean, you just kind of
include
him in. Include him in other stuff like She-Hulk.
Well, the key example would, the first thing that comes to my mind is Maestro. Is show Bruce Banner what the worst version of him is, and there you go. You have a story. Yeah,
I mean, you could do that.
That's a character I want to see at some point.
I really wish we got more of like a World War, like was it World War Hulk? Like I wish we had more elements of that. I mean, we had elements of that in Thor Ragnarok, but if they ever have, I mean, they could probably go back and touch on like his time at Sakaar. Planet Hulk. My bad, Planet Hulk. I think that was what I was referring to, where he ends up having a son. That would be interesting. They could probably like just say like, oh yeah, back before Thor got there, he had
Yeah,
done some things.
They can easily retcon that and like do a backstory, look back a little bit. But I mean that's what I mean. Like there's no real rights disputes outside of Marvel. Like
What about
Warner
on the
Brothers,
DC? What about on the DC side? Warner Brothers
Warner
owns all of it?
Brothers,
Bros
Warner
has it
Brothers,
all.
Warner Brothers has it all. Dark Horse is its own entity. Image is its own entity.
Okay.
The writers all hold their own control for their individual series. Like Todd McFarlane owns all the rights to Spawn. Always will. He'll never relinquish them. He'll lease them, but he'll never give them up. That's his love child. And the same thing with
Yeah.
the writer of Hellboy. It's the same way. They leased out the things to Lionsgate and Legendary when they did their films and got them right back. A lot of
Okay.
other studios won't take the chance of losing their characters to a contract deal.
Yeah, that's true.
So the only real rights disputes they ever had were in Marvel, because there were so many different franchises that started in different times.
Yeah. Other than that, I feel like as far as like mainstream perception of this, I think we've already gotten to what the future is going to be, where this kind of content is so saturated in the mainstream now that it's kind of the new norm. I feel like, and so I don't see that ever changing. I think the power of nerddom is here to stay.
I think it'll fade out eventually. I don't think it'll fade back to where it used to be, where it was basically seclusion. Oh, you're a nerd. I don't associate with you. I think it'll end up being more of the kind of a background kind of deal, where it falls back into we get Marvel DC movies around blockbuster time. Might get a show every now and then, like 1 or 2 shows a year. They show up on either primetime networks or on streaming services, but they're not like majorly dominated. I feel like eventually something else is going to come along that's going to pique people's interest as trends rise and fall. And I mean, it's probably not going to happen for a while. I mean, I say probably 10 plus years, but
That's fine by me.
I think eventually it will fade out a little bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say it'd probably fade out by the time I'm like 50.
Yeah, then you're fading out, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Shit, I'm on
Back in my day.
I'm not even 30 and I'm already fading out. It's not even 11 o'clock yet, and I'm like, I should have been in bed 2 hours ago.
Oh man. Well, I think that was a good chat. I think that was a good show. I enjoyed kind of like going, diving back into the past and seeing how things got from there to now. So you guys have any last little bits of stuff that you guys want to talk about?
No, not me.
Yeah.
Go
Well, for the viewers watching either live on Twitch right now, or if you guys are watching the recording on YouTube, Russ, go ahead and tell the people again who you are and where they can find you.
I'm a writer for The Direct. You can find me on Twitter at Russ Milheim, RussMilheim. And then The Direct is exactly how it sounds, thedirect.com. And then they're also on Twitter. I'm sure you've seen them. So
there we go. But yeah, thank you guys for joining us tonight. Join us next week live on Twitch as we get down and nerdy with it yet again. Jagger, what do we have on the schedule this week?
Well, you get more of me every night
Let's
this
go.
week. Tomorrow night, I'll be on Otaku's Anonymous talking about one of my favorite horror mangakas, Junji Ito, master of horror, anime, and manga. We'll be diving into his works and how it's evolved and changed over the years. And then Thursday night, I'm doing monster movie mashup. I'm going to be comparing Eastern monster movies to Western monster movies and how they differ and how things have changed over the years.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Spoopy. Very
Spoopy.
spoopy. It's spoopy season, guys.
But yeah, starting to change. Pumpkin spice is back. My
God.
fuel rises.
Well, alrighty, guys. If there's any topics that you guys would like to see us cover on this channel, please leave a suggestion in the comments down below. Or if you're watching us live, go ahead and suggest something in chat. We will definitely take that into consideration. But yes, please, if you want to help and support us, please like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, or go ahead and just share the live link whenever you see us live. Just go ahead and pop it on Twitter. We're on Twitter. Go ahead and retweet that. It's a big help. It's a big help, and it lets us know that what we're doing is entertaining to you, and you want to see more of it. But I hope you all have a great night, and stay nerdy, my friends. Bye-bye!